So we're on page, I think it's 243 in the version you're using. I'm using today a different version. Am I right? Is it 243?
I don't think so. We were started on 273, and then on one day when, what was it? We said there wasn't going to be a share, and then there was
Right.
a WhatsApp about for bringing.
Okay, but we went on to the next page, to 274. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah.
First share that I was on, we stopped on page 273, and it's in the middle of the Hayinu, the Nefesh HaSichlit.
Okay, that's where we are. So tell, where of 273 is it? I want everyone to hear.
4 lines from the top, in the middle of the line, the Hayinu.
V'hainu. Okay.
The Hayinu, the Nefesh.
Okay. Now, I'm going to explain today this idea of the Nefesh HaSichlitz. It's a very fundamental teaching in Chabad Hasidus. Because generally speaking, we talk about the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Abamis. Seldom do we talk about a third soul, a third drive, a Nefesh HaSichlis. However, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe alludes to it, and in chapter 42, and I think elsewhere, one other place, to my recollection, he actually mentions the words Nefesh HaSichlis. So we know from this that there is a third Nefesh. What is this Nefesh? And this is what I want to talk about before we continue in the text. The Nefesh HaSichlis is what we call the human intellectual drive. It's that aspect of a person where free will is centered there. And just for a simple position, the Nefesh Elikis is godly, is holy. The Nefesh Abami, as the name implies, is Bahami, animalistic, right? When a person is presented with a situation and you say, you have free will to make a choice, do I have free will? Really? Well, wait a minute. My godly soul only knows of God. And my Bahami, my animalistic soul, only knows of Behema. So how do I have free will? If I'm plugged into godly soul, I'm godly. If I'm plugged into animalistic soul, animalistic. So, and in order to make a free will choice, I have to be...
The rabbi keeps freezing.
Okay. I'm seeing a net there.
Yeah.
Okay, we're with you. We're with you, Rabbi Dolphin.
Yeah, okay, but you hear me, right?
Not when you freeze.
We'll just continue.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is, whatever I do seemingly is either animalistic or godly. And if that's the case, there is no neutrality for there to be free will. So then the question is, this whole idea of free will is a Baba Maisa, is a made-up story.
Why? If the way that I understood it, and
Go ahead.
right, one's going to drive and the other's going to be a passenger. Either the Nefesh Elokis is going to drag the Nefesh Bahamas with it, or the Nefesh Bahamas is going to drag the Nefesh Elokis with it. But who is in charge? Who's behind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the unanswered question: is where does that free will reside? How do you put your Nefesh Elokis in charge?
Well, before you get to how do I put the Nefesh Elokis in charge, you have to ask yourself another fundamental question: what aspect of the self has the free will?
Okay, right.
And the answer, and that's what I'm getting at. And there is an aspect of the self that has free will, that's not predetermined by godliness or animalism. And that place is called seichel, intellect. Hence, nefesh hasichlis. There is a place that God made within the human being that's called intellect, which it is there that there is the true free will ability. Do I use my mind to go to the right, to go to the left? So I've given you the example in the past. For example, you have someone brings to you a plate of apples, red, yellow, and green. What? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And you choose red. Why do you choose red? Because you like the color red or you like the taste of red. So you're predetermined by red. That's free will? That's not free will. And so too with yellow and green. So really, in the physical world that we live in, seemingly all of free will is just a mirage, a fantasy. I'm always predetermined. Nurture versus nature, or sometimes nurture and nature.
But it can't be that way.
Why can't it be?
There'd be no purpose. Because there'd be no purpose if our neshama is coming into the world.
I understand. I understand that, but that doesn't explain logically where free will is. You're telling me it can't be that. I know that as well. I teach that for 50 years, of course. The question is, how does it work? So I agree with you. There's no madness to this system. So Chassidus, this is what I'm getting at. Chabad Chassidus says, it's based on the Rambam and the early philosophers, it's not their chiddush, that the seat, the nekuda of free will is in the seichel of man. This pure seichel of man is unadulterated. The seichel of man, on one hand, strives for something greater. The intellect, the power of intellect, drives man to disattach themselves from the emotional and go to something more pure, sophisticated, rich intellect. And at the very same time, how are you going towards something that's greater, i.e. faith, using intellect? And that's the chiddush, that within intellect says, I'm limited. I can only go so far. Aristotle went so far, and he couldn't come to a conclusion that there is what we call immortality of the soul. If those of you who studied philosophy should be familiar with what I'm saying. And why is that? Because the seichel of the human seichel, Moshe, as great as it is, including Einstein and Aristotle and Plato and the greatest, has a limitation. You know what its limitation is? It can never unstrip itself from seichel, from intellect, because it only uses seichel to come to something higher. Nevertheless, seichel says, I can go so far, I can't go more. And a believer says there's something that's beyond seichel, and that's faith. And that's where Aristotle, Plato, and other early philosophers stopped. They stopped short. They could not conclude that it's faith. You know, reminds me, years ago, a friend of mine who actually is Yartzeit, this Shabbos, Rabbi Brin, I wrote a book about him. And, he passed away at 40. He was he had a genetic illness. And I spoke to his cardiologist at Sinai or NYU, a world cardiologist. And I said to him, the fact that he got out of his body 40 years, would you say it's miraculous? This was a non-Jewish person complete. And he said, Rabbi, I'll tell you, I can't say it was miraculous, but I say it sure doesn't happen often. It's very unrare that a person with that genetic situation should get 40 years out of his body. In other words, he couldn't say it's a miracle. Why not? Because his seichel limited him that everything must be hardcore evidence. Another example. I led once a Shabbaton in Atlanta for a breakaway from a young Israel minyan, right? There were 4 PhDs in this minyan. 4. Broyd, Michael Broyd, Don Seaman, and 2 others. I mean, these were very bright people, educated. And I spoke about my book on the Rebbe and Rabbi Soloveitchik called Rav and Rebbe. And Motzei Shabbos, they decided that they want to have a round table with me. I said, no problem. And I knew that they're going to throw darts at me from all sides. Arrows, darts, and stones. And that's fine. That's what I was there for. So one of them says to me, I think the one I don't remember his name, he says to me, you know, I read parts of your book, I looked at it, and it's nice stories and nice ideas and nice interviews, but it's not hardcore evidence. And we in academia, we need hardcore evidence. Shema Shabbos with a yarmulke, small yarmulke, from Jew, very bright. And I said to him, I'm not an academic like you are. I'm an academic in a different world. And I don't want to be an academic. You be the academic. To me, this testimony is greater than your academic approach. And it's fine for you. And I even discussed this with Professor David Schwartz of Bar Ilan. And he wrote to me that today in academia, testimony from people is considered proof, and sometimes more proof than all the intellectual approaches of academia. I'm not saying that to toot my horn, and they disagreed. You know, we had a good discussion. It was a great discussion. Yes?
Can you say that again, what you just said? I missed that last part.
Which part did you miss? Where did you?
What Dr. David Schwartz?
Doctor. I don't know if his name is David. I forget his name. His last name is Schwartz. I'll remind myself now. At Bar Ilan, he's a Shema Shabbos and a PhD in I think philosophy or Jewish religion or Jewish history. I forget. And he's published quite a bit. So he said to me that there's a new school of thought in this world of academia that testimony is as valid, testimony from people who you interview, is as valid as intellectual arguments and proofs that it is this way. So for example, was Rabbi Soloveitchik a warm or a cold person? Was he, So on the face of it, those that know, knew him, and those that know the brisk approach would say they were cold. They were more in the Litvak orientation of being cold and not as emotional and that whole approach. Well, in my research, I found him to be a warm person, although his facade was a cold one. And boy, was he warm and emotional because, for example, and I have many testimony from people who told me he came into a house in Manhattan and he walked to the bookshelf and he saw a book and he turned to the host. He turned to the host who invited him in and he says, Moshe, where are you going? I'm talking to you. Are you there? He asked me a question and he gets lost. Okay, anyway.
I want to hear the story.
I know, but Moshe asks a question and then he gets lost. Okay, so the point is...
I'll fill him in. Look, he's back.
He's back. Moshe, you ask a question, you get lost. I'm answering your question. It's your question. It's all right.
I get my pen.
It's all right. No apologies necessary. So basically, he goes to the bookshelf, he takes out a book, and he looks at it, he puts it down, And he tells the host invited him in. And he says, what are you doing with that garbage here? That was a very emotional response. He didn't study the book. He just saw a line and he had a gut reaction. This writer, he doesn't know anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that to badmouth Rabbi Soloveitchik. I'm just telling you that, so I wrote this, right? So the academics would say to me that, I'm sorry, this cannot prove whether Soloveitchik is cold or warm, emotional or intellectual. And what Schwartz said to me, that similar type of testimony that I got from people, which I presented in the book, is adequate to make an argument, whatever position I'm taking at the time. Now, why am I saying this? Because Seichel can only go so far. Yesterday we had, it wasn't a shir I gave, it was a little farbrengen about the birthday of the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe. We spoke about the Chatchila Ribber. The whole idea of the Chatchila Ribber is to go out of your box, to break boundaries, right? For Seichel needs to break its boundary. What's its boundary? Everything must be understood intellectually. If not, it's not important. If not, it doesn't exist. And this is, to answer your question, Isser, what you said earlier, what you explained, this is the emunah of a yid, that in the place of Seichel itself, Seichel comes to the determination, there's only so much I can go, and the rest I don't know, and therefore I turn to faith. And that's where free will is. It's there where a person has their free will, and where nefesh elikis or nefesh abamis kick in. So of course, when a person has a choice, should I?
Why do we call it nefesh hasichlis instead of nefesh emunis?
No, because wait, good question. Answer. The nefesh, as soon as you say the word nefesh, you're talking about a drive, right? So we're not talking about the result of the drive. We're talking about what is it that gets you to come to that result? And the answer is the nefesh, the drive. The drive of intellect is where a person's free will is at, which concludes that there's something greater than intellect, i.e. faith. So the faith is what?
It hits a barrier.
That's right. And so I'm saying this because we're about to learn about the nefesh hasichlis. In other words, every person here, every person on earth has a nefesh hasichlis. In other words, a non-Jew has a nefesh hasichlis too, and this is an important point. Velvel. Listen to this nekuda. And Yonason, I'm sure you probably heard this and thought about it. And it's only in a few Maamarim that you find this idea. A guy, I once wrote a pilpul on this. This is my early teenage years learning Chassidus. This amazed me. This idea amazed me. That a non-Jew has a nefesh hasichlis too. What the non-Jew doesn't have is the nefesh elikis, and that's the implication in Tanya chapter 1. But the seat of free will, a non-Jew has too. In other words, the human condition, God says, must have free will. The human condition, not the Jewish condition. Does that fit into your learning of other aspects of Torah? See this and otherwise, what I just said, or not?
It's falling into place.
But this nekuda, that Bechira is not exclusive to Jews. It's every human being must have Bechira. Every human being must have free will. The difference is the extent of the Bechira. By the way, if you guys want to really understand this better, the Rebbe's Lekutei Sichos, Volume 3, Parshas, I think, Shmini or Acharei. I don't have the Sefer in front of me, but that's my recollection. There's a very long footnote. It might even be footnote number 19. It's my childhood memory. And over there, the Rebbe tackles this issue that I'm discussing. It's very important to really understand that footnote on this topic. But in our discussion, I'm summarizing it that free will is necessary for the human condition. So that's where a person has the ability to make a real choice. And in the case of a Jew, do I use my intellect towards Elikus or towards Bahamis? Towards Nefesh Elikis or Nefesh Abamis? Any questions before we go inside the text? This is... Yes, Yonis, you want to say something? Okay. So let's go 273. 4 lines from the top. And he says... V'hainu, the nefesh hasichlis nikre b'shem Adam. When we say Adam, man, we're referring to the nefesh hasichlis, the intellectual drive. And now, once the previous Rebbe mentioned this, he explains. V'hine b'shema is when it comes to the various names that a human being is given, yesh, arba mine shemis. There are 4 different synonyms. There are 4 different names. Vehem Shem Ha'etzem, which is called the essential name. Shem HaToyer, a figurative way of a name. Shem HaPe'ula, a name that's created by the action. V'Shem HaKinui, and a nickname. Shehu Shem HaMushal, which is a borrowed name. And he explains. Shem ha'etzem, when we talk about an essential name, hu ma she'etzem hadavar nikra b'shmoya she'yikru esay. This is the name that's given to this item or this person. This is the essential name of the person. So in other words, a glass has its name, a cup has its name. We're talking about in Hebrew. And a person has its name, and that is what the person is. So, Shulchan is the name given to a table. So, somehow, the table is sustained through the words Shulchan. Avram, the name given to Avram, our dear student, is the name that makes Avram tick. Just parenthetically, that's why it's important to use Hebrew names. And even people who are normally called by their English name, slowly but surely they change, and it's good to work with them to change their name if they're Jewish to their Hebrew name, because that's the keli that draws the chayas into their life. A story, and Moshe, you're going to love this story, I think. You all heard of the family Hecht. The Chabad family, the Hecht family, right? The most known probably is J.J. Hecht, Yaakov Yehuda Hecht, Rabbi Hecht, who was like the Rebbe's ambassador. You know, he was very close, and he developed the Wednesday hour public school program tremendously. Anyway, Rabbi Hecht, and he had a brother. He had several brothers. One was known, the youngest, Sidney Hecht. And Sidney Hecht's Hebrew name was Shalom Hecht. He passed away, I think, a year ago or 2 years ago. He's 91 years old. I knew him, I met him. I met him several times and I spoke to him. So it was at the Farbrengen, I think, 1958, Purim. In general, the Purim Farbrengens by the Rebbe in the early years, in particular from 1950 to 1960, were very heavenly, many like miracles and things that were unusual happened. One year, Yoni, you got to turn your phone off. One year, one year, the Rebbe said everyone should turn their hats upside down. Like, a very strange behavior. But the Rebbe was talking about a certain idea, and he wanted to make it real. Another year, this I think I've told you, you heard the Rebbe said those that want to be blessed with wealth should raise their hand. So these were like these Purim Farbrengens. Another year, the Rebbe said that Reb Folia Khan, Reb Yoel Khan's father, said that the big Litvische person in Bnei Brak is jealous of a little boy who learns Tanya, which caused, the Rebbe said, the Israeli Post got rich because many people sent him letters complaining about what Rebbe Folia Khan said. So these were things were on Purim, okay? So Purim had that miraculous energy, and of course in 1953, that's when the Rebbe said, hooray, 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 right? In Russia, and that's when they said, hurrah, Stalin died at that time. So these were Purim. So I'm telling you now another Purim story. So I think it was 1958, and the Rebbe took quite a bit of l'chaim. He was very animated, and he spoke to people that he knew, and he spoke to them like we're talking to each other, So the Rebbe says, it's on tape, you can hear it, the Rebbe's voice. He says, Sidney Hecht. He shouts out in front of everyone, Sidney Hecht. Ruf sich, call yourself by your name, Sholem Hecht. And say l'chaim on a full cup of wine or vodka, whatever, and Hashem should bless you. Well, he was there, and the Rebbe said, so he said l'chaim, and he took upon himself to start calling himself Sholem Hecht. He was married, I think, for 8 years or so, 7, 8 years, and he hadn't had any children. And subsequent to that, Farbrengen, and the Rebbe saying he should become known as Sholem. The year he had a child, his first child, the following year. On one hand, you could say it's a miracle, and it is. But on the other hand, the name, the Hebrew name is Mamshich de Bracha. I'm just saying the way, according to the Arizal, the oisius of the Hebrew words is Mamshich de Bracha. So again, I'm not no Rebbe, and I can't tell you how, what, but what I'm saying is that, so we're learning here about the Shem HaEtzem. The Shem HaEtzem is the essential name of every single person, and that's what they're called by in their essence. Next thing is Shem HaToyar. Shem HaToyar is a figure, like a toyar, an image. It's a name that describes the essence, and it divides itself into several different aspects. In 4 different ways: appearance, smell, taste, and sound. Kamas the godel the cotton, based on if there's lots of it or little of it, oy choizik v'chalishus, or whether you're strong or you're weak, gilui revealed, oy seiser or hidden, v'hadoime binyoni atoyer, and similarities of qualities in imagery. So the Rebbe says this is what we mean by Shem HaToyar. In other words, let's say it used to be they would call in Lubavitch, they would call Shloima the Hinkediker. Hinkedik means limping. They didn't call him Shloima Shochat or Shloima whatever his name was. He became known as the Hinkediker. Now that's not Shem HaEtzem, that's Shem HaToyar, because he limped. So he got the name Shloima the Hinkediker. So when people knew which Shloima are we talking about, Shloima the Hinkediker. Okay, and by the way, it wasn't just someone who had an issue, a health issue. It could be Shlomo the Geller, the red one, because he had red hair, he had a red beard. So he became known as Shlomo the Geller. That's Shem HaToya. V'Shem HaPa'ula Hu Shepoyel Adavar Ahu. The third name is a name that person gets based on what they do. In other words, Shlomo the carpenter, Shlomo the doctor, right? Okay? Avram the musician.
Like in the Gemara.
Yeah.
Yossi Asandler.
Exactly. Very good. Yossi Asandler. Yochanan Asandler. Yochanan, not Yossi. Yochanan. Did you see Yossi Asandler? Maybe. I remember Yochanan Asandler. Anyway. Exactly. So that's called Shem HaPa'ula. Now, number 4, V'Shem HaKinui. Shem HaKinui is a nickname. And I don't have to tell you what that means. You know what a nickname is. Hu masha shoel hushal mishemo etzem alazeh. It's a name that's borrowed from the essential name of the person, le'inyan hadoim aloi, that expresses something similar. The Rebbe always said in the name of the previous Rebbe, Kol Yisrael b'shem Yisrael, Kol Yehudi b'shem Yisrael Yechuna. Every Jew is given a nickname, Jew. Who is this Jew? Yankel, Yossel, the carpenter, this, the large one, the small one, the red one. No, Jew. Right? The Megillah, Purim. Ish Yehudi, Hoya B'Shushan Abira. Ish Yehudi. It's not a Shem Etzem. It's not a Shem HaPa'ula. It's not Shem HaToar. It's Shem HaKinui. That's what we're talking about. Let's continue. What time is it now?
3:15.
3:15.
Okay, another few minutes. And it says, Ukamoi b'shem Evan. Take, for example, the name stone. Sheyesh beidalid min Shem Aselu, the Shem Evan, Shem Etzem. A stone. A stone is a stone. That's its essential name, Etzem. Number 2, b'shem HaToyer who becomes godel cotton. Is it a large stone or a big or a small stone? That would be the Shem HaToyer, a description of the name, of the item that's called with a certain name. Number 3, v'shem HaPa'ula. Shem HaPa'ula means im pashut or even toiv. Is it a simple stone or is it a diamond? Umahu skulasoi. And what is the remedy associated with this particular stone? Sheyesh avnei chen. There are stones of grace. Avnei hatzlocha. And there are stains of success. V'havcha. And there are stains which are the opposite, a disaster. And that would be the Shem HaPa'ula. In other words, this particular stone, is it used for mining, and in what way, etc., etc. And what does it bring to a person? Luck, health, whatever. You could say the same thing with the marijuana plants, the cannabis. There is this is the name of the plant, cannabis, right? I'm not a big bucky in this. You correct me if I'm making mistakes over here. But cannabis, now you say it's medicinal and it helps for this illness. That's already a description, and within a description itself, it's also a shame. It has certain pu'ulot, certain results, where it can heal a person from pain or get them to a different state of consciousness, whatever the case. Let's go further. V'yesh b'gam shem hakinui, and then there is also a nickname, shu mushal mimenu, which is borrowed from the essential name, l'davar shu shalei muzav klal. The fourth name, the nickname, is completely, it doesn't denote the essential name. And he says, for example, Kamay Levo Evan. There's an expression it goes like this: the heart of a stone. Shebelev, in the heart, hinisham even, hushem mushalin atimtum. There's no stone in the heart. We have gallstones elsewhere. We don't have a stone in the heart. It's a kinui. It's a nickname. What is the nickname, Moshe? Hard as a rock. Timtum, jaded, stuffed, clogged. I don't feel it. You have a heart as a rock. Leiv ha'evan. Leiv evan. You have a heart like a rock. That name Evan in that context is a kinui, is a nickname. This is an explanation. The Rebbe is using the word Evan as an example to explain the 4 different names that he's speaking about. Let's continue. The Evan, a stone in its very essence, is hard and heavy. So therefore, when one wants to explain the concept of a jaded, clogged, stuffed heart, mitayeroi, we use a toar, we use a term, b'toyer the shem Evan, we borrow the name, we use the name Evan as a reference, as a borrowed name to explain what a jaded heart is. V'cheinu b'cholo arba plugos, and the Rebbe says this concept you have for all 4 divisions of doimim, of the inanimate, tzomeach, the vegetative, chai, the living, medaber, the speaking, sheyesh bahem arba min hashem asela. Within each of the domains, you have these 4 types. So, for example, we learned in the Torah, Pasha Shmini, there's a bird called Chasida. The name of the bird is Chasida, like a chassid. What does Rashi say? Rashi says, Al Shem, it's named this way because it does chesed with other birds. That's already another aspect to the name. Its name is Chasida. The fact that it does chesed to others, it's a borrowed name that we use. So again, in other words, so now we would have to explore what are the other 2. Since every species, what are we saying here at the end? Every species has these 4 descriptions: in the inanimate world, in the vegetative world, in a tzemeach chai, living world, animal world, and in the human world, in the medaber. Chavra, I know it's some heavy stuff, but it could be understood. It needs to be understood. So I want you to think about it, and tomorrow you'll ask me, and we'll try to clarify. Okay? Sei gesund, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Have a great day. Shalom. Bye-bye. Take care.
Great day. Take
Take
care.
care. Bye.